I, John Easton, Deputy Governor of Rhode Island and the Plymouth Plantations, do swear that the words that I relate in this missive are true and concern the great and grievous war that has broken out between our natives of this region and the several English colonies recently planted here, through the grace of God. For 4 years' time, reports of the jealousies of war had been very frequent, yet we did not think that now a war was breaking forth. But about a week before it did, we had cause to think it would. Then, to endeavor to prevent it, we sent a man to Philip, known as Metacom, that if he would come to the ferry, we would come over to speak with him. He called his council and agreed to come to us, himself unarmed and about 40 of his men armed. Then 5 of us went over. 3 were magistrates, and we sat very friendly together. We told him our business was to endeavor that they might well not receive or do wrong. They said that that was well. They had done no wrong. The English had wronged them. We said we knew English said the Indians had wronged them, and the Indians said the English wronged them. But our desire was that a quarrel might rightly be averted. The Indians owned that fighting was the worst way when they propounded how right might take place. We said by arbitration. They said all English agreed against them, and so by arbitration they had had much wrong. Many miles square of land so taken from them, for English would have English arbiters. And once they were persuaded to give in their arms, and once they had, that they had not gotten them back until they had given 100 pounds. Since that time, they all agreed that they would rather die than lose their lands and livelihoods. We said they might choose an Indian king. The English might choose the governor of New York, that neither had to say either were parties in any differences. They said they had not heard of that way, and that we spoke honestly. So we were persuaded that if that way had been tendered earlier, they would have accepted. We endeavored not to hear their complaints, and said that it was not convenient for us. But Philip charged that it was the height of dishonesty in us not to hear their complaints, and therefore we consented to hear them. What follows are Philip's words. They said they had been the first in doing good to the English, and the English the first in doing wrong, and said when the English first came, their Sachem's father was a great man, and the English as a little child. He constrained other Indians from wronging the English, and gave them corn, and showed them how to plant, and was free to do them any good, and had let them have 100 times more land than now the Sachem had for his own people. But their Sachem's brother, when he was king, came miserably to die by being forced to court, as they judged, poisoned. And another grievance was, if 20 of their honest Indians testified that an Englishman had done them wrong, it was as nothing. But if one of their worst Indians testified against any Indian or their king, when it pleased the English, that was sufficient. Another grievance was, when the king sold land to the English would say that it was more than they agreed to, and the writings must be proof against all of them, and some of their kings had done wrong to sell so much. He left his people, none of them being given to drunkenness, and the English made them drunk, and then cheated them through their land bargains. But now their kings were forewarned not to part with land, and for not to compare anything to the value of the land thereof. This, they said, led the English to disenfranchise and disinherit their kings and queens, and choose others who would deal with the English in the way the English considered fair. Another grievance that they had against the English was that though they may move 30 miles from English villages and farms, the English cattle and horses still increased in numbers, and they would come, no matter what Indians would do, and spoil their corn by eating and trampling. They did not, nor were they ever used to fencing. And the English, who had the land from the Indian, would not put said fences upon it. It was too much trouble, they said. And as so many English were so desirous to sell the Indians liquors, that when the Indians spent their nights in drunkenness, they would raven upon the cattle, and they would kill them. For their grievances against the cattle were most severe, and the sober Indians could not prevent this, nor could even great sachems. We knew before these were their grand complaints, but then we only endeavored to persuade that all complaints might be righted without war, but could have no further answer, but that they had not heard of that way for the governor of New York and the Indian king to have the hearing of it. We had cause to think if that had been tendered, it would have been accepted. We endeavored that, however, they should lay down their arms, for the English were too strong for them. They said then that the English should do to them as they did when they were too strong for the English. So we departed without any discourteousness, and suddenly had letter from Plymouth's governor. They intended in arms to confront Philip, but no information that was required or what terms had been refused to have the quarrel decided. And in weeks' time, after we had been with the natives, the war thus begun. These are the words of Deputy Governor of Rhode Island and the Providence Plantation, John Easton, in the winter of 1675. May God defend the right.